Hey, James, good to see you here. Welcome, everybody. We're getting started here, Career Lab Wednesday, going live on YouTube and on LinkedIn Live. Thank you, Jane. Okay, it looks like we are up and rolling. Welcome, James. Good to have you here. Alpha, Otter, Pilot, good to have you as well. James, I'm going to go ahead and mute you for now as we're just getting launched here and have you come off in a bit. So welcome everybody. This is Career Lab Wednesday. I'm your host, George Miller, and I am so excited to have Drew Allison back. Many of you know Drew from, what was it, last winter through spring. We had the pleasure of having you on once a month and maybe even more than that earlier on. And I'm going to share a little bit about your journey, Drew, and please add to it after I get us going here. But I'm going to jump into that in a moment. But as everybody's joining in, I want to say that our primary objective is to support you in your career. So any questions career related does not have to do with starting your own business. I'll say more about that in a moment. But if you have a question about your resume, you have a question about interviewing, you have a question about how to work with your boss or your managers or any career-related question, ask it. You know me, if you've been here before, my specialty is in emotional intelligence, is really the relationship side of things. Even if that is your relationship with yourself, your resume, your relationship with an individual, the interview, or your team. So that's where I will come in with responding to most of those questions. But any questions welcome, because we have people who join in who are great resources and can answer a variety of other specific questions. So just wanted to say that. Love it when you jump in directly like James and Alpha here. That's wonderful. We get to talk with you directly that way. If you can't, no problem. Type your comments and questions into the comment section on YouTube or on LinkedIn Live. Jane will get those over to us and we'll do our best to answer your questions that way. And if you're looking for the Zoom link, just request it. I know it's in like 5 places. But you know, I know how things are online. It's sometimes we lose track of things. So all that to say, now I want to introduce Drew. Drew started joining in on Career Lab Wednesday when in a career transition, and ultimately it led to him starting his own business. So he was interviewing with all kinds of companies, and being one of the key things in interviewing is that you're interviewing the interviewer. So Drew's interviewing these companies and he's talking to people, really finding out what's going on there, seeing how he would be a good fit. And increasingly, he's like, you know what? I'm helping people out with, they're in these conversations I'm having with them, but I'm not necessarily the right fit, and if they are giving me an offer, I don't know that I want to take the offer. I think I want to start my own business. I think that's what this job search is leading me to. So, Drew, I think that's a high level run through as I've experienced you starting your own business. And I would love for you to add anything there as you are starting to share with us how you start your own business.
Yeah. Well, thanks, George. I appreciate that. It's great to be back. This was a very safe space for me for a long time last winter. And there was a 3-month stretch where I was here every week talking about my journey in transitioning out of corporate America. I was a corporate insurance executive. And spent 4 years in the insurance industry, 10 years in the high-end retail industry, working for out of the corporate office and out in the field throughout the country. And I was let go at the end of last year, and I knew I needed to figure out what I was going to do next. And I was dedicated to applying the same sales systems that I use in my own sales. I've always been a sales manager, a sales leader, a sales executive, or an individual contributor. So I had a structure for my activity. Dials became applications, meetings, basically, different stages in my sales pipeline started to equate to my job search. And I was doing X number of dials every single week. I was having X number of interviews, X number of follow-up conversations, and holding myself accountable by showing up to this room and telling everybody, hey, I did it, or I didn't do it, and this is why, and this is where I fell short. And throughout that process, I was gravitating more and more towards people who didn't need full-time sales leadership. They were too small of a company, or they were too new, or they had different priorities financially. And I started to get these opportunities to work with folks in a more fractional capacity. I read a stat last week that last year in 2022, there were about 1,000 people on LinkedIn that had the word fractional in their title. And now there's over 75,000. It's just completely blown up. This whole idea of fractional leadership and fractional management and support has completely skyrocketed. And I saw it as a way for me to dip my toes into lots of different industries, getting to know different types of people and different environments to see where I may want to end up long term. B, be able to support people and meet them where they are. So if they can't afford a full-time sales director, but want to bring somebody in for 20 hours a week to help manage their sales team and enhance their sales systems, I was the person for the job. And so I slowly started understanding slowly started to identify what I call my ideal client profile, or my ICP. And this is a pretty standard term where in sales, where we're identifying the type of client, the type of person that we want to be working with. So the ideal client profile for me, was a small to medium-sized company looking for sales support, and they already had a sales team anywhere from 1 to 5 people, and I really expanded that 1 to 10 people, and that was where my business started, was with an identification of who I wanted to serve. So the title for today is it's kind of starting your business 101, and I'm going to be talking about the kind of the hard skills and the soft skills and the timeline for the things that I did to get my business off the ground. And for me, that was step number 1, was identifying who I wanted to serve and the types of people I wanted to be spending my time with. Because starting my own business was an opportunity for me to really pick and choose the type of people I get to work with every day, which is such a blessing, and so, something that I haven't always had the opportunity to control. And it was something that I really valued. So once I identified who I wanted to serve, the real question is, how am I going to serve them? And this is where there's a lot of reconciling that goes on for me as a business owner, and for a lot of other business owners that I know, is there's the things that I want to do, and there's the things that my clients need me to do, and finding the middle ground between the two. And one thing, my sister actually started her own company a couple of years before I did. And one of the things that she taught me was that it's okay to do some of the more basics versions of what you do, kind of the entry level stuff, on your way to doing the things that you really want to do full term. So once I identified who I wanted to serve, then I identified all of the possible ways that I can serve them. So everything from high level, executive level experience, forecasting and strategizing and planning, to more mid-level, where I'm managing or coaching salespeople directly and creating assets and trainings and support, all the way down to just doing content creation, where I'm creating sales playbooks and documenting best practices and documenting processes and serving as admin for their CRM, helping them keep their CRM up and running. Those are sort of the 3 service tiers of what I offer. Now, ideally, I want to spend all my time in the first 2, but that's where I love to be. But I can do the first one. And if I need it for foundational revenue for my company, I'm more than willing to put the hours in. So that was a big part of my journey in starting my company, was understanding what I want to be doing, but also all of the other things I could do and could bill for and charge for that I know my clients need and the services they need. So that was really helpful early on because it helped me get some early contracts to get money coming in so that I could invest in the company. And that was sort of the big lesson that I learned as I was coming up with this idea of being a business development consultant and a sales coach, is I wanted to bring in revenue. I wanted to make money, to spend money, to make money. There's kind of this phrase, you have to spend money to make money, which I totally agree with. You have to invest in yourself, you have to invest in your company, but you have to do it responsibly, at least in my experience. And this is where I'll just say real quick, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a CPA, I'm not an accountant. This is not like official advice. This is my story and my experience, and I'm happy to talk about it openly and honestly. But I just want to throw that out there from a disclaimer standpoint that if you have real questions about the legality or the accounting practices, that's not where my specialty is. And that I'll touch on that in a moment when it comes to surrounding yourself with allies. So the understanding who I wanted to serve and understanding all the different ways that I could serve them, I knew I was ready to start putting this company together. And from a logistical standpoint, in the state of Illinois, that meant deciding what type of company I wanted to open, getting a federal EIN number, which is an employer identification number, and opening a bank account so I could accept revenue from my clients. I wanted my clients to be able to pay my company so I could keep that separate from my personal finances. Now, in the state of Illinois, you can also be what's called a solo operator, where you're taking money in personally, and then later on in the year, you're allocating that as part of a company. So there's different ways to do it depending on what works for you. I recommend Googling around, having a more one-to-one conversation with somebody about what you need. For me, an LLC was perfect. An LLC separated Cape and Cowell Consulting, which is my consulting company. It separated that entity from me personally, gave me that distance, and allowed me to create assets and ownership under the company. And then all the money comes into Cape and Cowell, and then I pay my expenses, and then I pay myself, and then I've got a plan and a strategy for that. So the first thing to do was to register with to file for my LLC, which I did just through the state of Illinois website. It took about a week, I think about 7 or 8 business days to get back for that and to hear from them. Once I had that, I was able to get my federal employer identification number, which took about 20 minutes, super fast. You do it on the federal website, really easy. And then I was able to go into my local bank here in Logan Square in Chicago and open a business banking account. And so, with my company filed, with a bank account open, I could now start billing clients. So what have I done so far? I've identified who I wanted to serve. I've identified all the different ways that I can serve them, and I've set myself up operationally where I can. I've set myself up operationally where I can now accept revenue, accept payment, and go from there. So there's 2 more. I know there's a couple of questions coming in. I'm going to look at those in a second, but there's sort of 2 more steps to my introductory process that I created. The first was a series of templates, whether it's in Microsoft Word and Excel, Google or another service. But I came up with an invoicing template, which I just took from Google Docs. I searched templates in Google Docs, found an invoice, got the template, easy breezy. And then I created a ledger of how I would keep track of all the invoices coming in. And this way, as soon as I started billing people, I had systems in place to support that. And for me, it was just really important to have those logistics done and dusted. The last thing I did was I identified where I wanted to spend my money early. What was the most important thing that I wanted to spend my money on that would support my business? Not what I personally wanted, t-shirts, hats, big flashy website, car wrapped in my logo, whatever it might be. I may want to put money into that stuff, but really the most important things that I needed were a functioning website, very introductory, didn't need all the flashy bells and whistles. Worked with a website consultant that built my site through Squarespace. I'll say the whole thing cost maybe $500. So 500 there, 150 for the LLC. Opening the bank account was free. And then the last thing I wanted to spend money on was my logo. For me, it was really important to have a strong branding identity that I could go forth into the world with, something I felt really confident and comfortable with. And after I had come up with the name, Cape and Cowl Consulting, and if you're wondering what Cape and Cowl is a reference to, the cowl is the half mask that superheroes wear, like Batman. Cape is obviously a cape. And the reason I was inspired by that is A, I've been a superhero fan for over 30 years. And B, what I love about them is that their purpose is to do good in their communities. Friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. It's their purpose is to go out and do good for people who can't do it for themselves. And that is my personal driver for my business. I want to go out and do good in the community, provide a service, provide expertise, and give and empower people to really express themselves through sales and to support their business through sales. So that's where the tie-in came in. But the thing I learned early on was the importance of surrounding myself with allies that filled my own gaps. Because as a new business owner, I am not an expert in anything about being a business owner except for my own product. But everything about running a business, I'm doing for the very first time. And so I quickly surrounded myself with people who knew more than me. Kind of like how the president of the United States is often, they're often graded on the quality of the cabinet that they appoint, and having those cabinet members that have those expertises and surrounding themselves with advisors, exact same thing. And I am not a graphic designer. So I was willing to put $500 into a graphic designer to come up with my logo, my colors, my fonts. So that way I had all of that branding identity, and I could easily go in and create assets in something like Canva and start playing around with business card designs and other things that creatively were fun for me. But I could do it with the understanding that I had a branding identity that I could fall back on. I didn't have to make all these minutia decisions. I could really jump into some of the stuff that excited me. So I'm going to take a quick pause there. I saw, I'm going to take a quick read. George, I don't know if you have any hot takes or summaries as I catch up here.
The main thing I just want to, what you just said, allies who fill my gaps. If I get one thing from everything you just said, I talked with you last week as I'm beginning my own business. And so that's sort of how this whole conversation started. I was like, Drew, you got to come on and, share with Career Lab Wednesday about this process. I'll say a few more things about that, but that thing right there, allies who fill my gaps, being aware of what I'm not good at, and then reaching out to people who are good at that stuff to help me in my business, whether it's a conversation, whether it's or me paying them for their services, whatever, anywhere in this ballpark. I just think that is an incredibly important thing that you just said. And that's definitely, as you're categorizing things towards the hard skills, the soft skills, I think that one is in, the soft skills side of it, of being aware of what kind of emotional support you need and making those connections. And I want to set a little context too for career in things overall. So, we've had a funky economy for a while. And just in terms of the United States of America, this is a thing that we have ongoing. Our country was an engineered country. We came up with the way that our government functions in a way that's very different from how other things have done. So ever since the beginning of this country, we have been having changes happen in the marketplace. Our jobs change. We bring in new technology that creates a boom of growth and expansion. Things kind of die down. we're in one of those periods. And so a lot of companies are at a spot where they're not looking to bring on a new employee. They know that if they bring on the wrong person, that it's a huge cost to them. And so there's a lot more consulting gigs going on. There's a lot more of this. And so Drew, I just wanted to say that for the broader context of why I think this is so important. And just to have that mindset of, oh, if I'm not getting hired for what I think I should be getting hired for, maybe I need to look at myself differently and do like what Drew's doing and look at where I serve, what people actually need, and position myself in that manner so that I can be serving people, and instead of just being confused about why I'm not getting hired. So that might fit for a lot of you listening in. I don't know, but I thought it would be worth it to mention that. So cool. So I wanted to say that. And then I think, Drew, we should move to a few of these questions just now, and I'll do a quick room recap after the end of this, but let's move into these. Did you see Serena Stark's question?
I did, yeah. I really like Serena's question a lot. For those of you that can't see it, she's saying that she's planning on dropping off a resume and a cover letter for a job that she's interested in, and dropping it off in person. And she's looking for any advice on how to approach this. And I think this is great because George mentioned we are on a 4 years in, 3 years in on the COVID pandemic, and the way that completely changed how we communicate with people and have pushed us online, which has had a ton of benefits. It's opened my network up globally in a way that I never would have experienced. In fact, 2 of my clients right now are, one's based in Europe, one's in Mexico. There's places that I'd be working that I would never have the opportunity to work with. So I am not poo-pooing the benefits of the virtual world, but that is not to say that they by any means replace the value of meeting up in person and being able to experience people live, and getting to feed off of one another's energy and build a collective culture. And so I really applaud you, Serena, for wanting to drop your resume off in person. There's a couple things about that, right? So I don't know what industry you're in. I'm just going to assume it's an office that you're dropping it off to. One question is, when are people in the office? A lot of offices have people coming in Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday. Giving them a call and saying, "Hey, I'd love to drop this off. Is there a day when there's people around, and where the right person that might be around that I could introduce myself to?" So not being afraid to reach out, whether it's by phone or by email or both, to be honest. A good example, there's 2 concerts I want to go to tomorrow night, and I'm trying to figure out if I can make both happen. So I just started emailing whoever I could find at the venues, and like DMing people on Instagram that I knew worked there, or that I just found. And I was like, and finally I got the answer I needed. It took a little legwork, but I actually was able to find out, something just by asking. So trying to get some information about the company. Are there people in the office? Is the person that you want to talk to going to be there? And making sure it's a good use of your time and your resources to show up. It sounds like you've already decided that it is good. It's a good use for you to pop in personally, which is great. And in terms of advice, every person you interact with from the moment you step out of your car or step off the train is potentially a boss, coworker, peer, boss's boss, whoever. It's somebody that you could potentially be working with. So, and your brand is incredibly valuable. So how are you representing yourself? How are you showing up? How are you walking in? Making sure that you feel comfortable that you're dressed for the position that you want to be working in. And that means different things to different people in different industries. I'm wearing, I'm fairly casual in the moment. I've got a baseball cap on and a track top. And like, this is kind of my, when I'm in project mode, which is what I'm in today, this is how I feel comfortable. If I'm meeting a client for the first time, I may have a button-down shirt or a polo with a jacket, and maybe a little bit more formal. And if I know that it's somebody that has a more formal setting, I'll throw a tie on. Like I got no problem, showing up for the culture that I want to be a part of, and still representing myself authentically while I do it. So making sure you're well positioned. Have multiple copies of your resume. Don't just show up with one. You may get the chance to hand it to one or two people. So making sure you've got good copies. And obviously do the work on the resume beforehand, making sure that it's exactly what, the way you want it to, it says what you want it to say. It's succinct, it's compact. It's all of that resume stuff that sets you apart from other people. And the last bit of advice I would give is be conscious of how you introduce yourself. One of the things that I work with salespeople a lot is called a bumper sticker. And this ties back into me starting my business very closely. When I started Cape and Cowl Consulting, I needed to be able to tell people what I did, right? So by saying I'm a business development consultant and a sales coach, some people are like, yeah, I get that. I know exactly what that means. I understand it 100%. And I've got other people that are like, I don't know what those words are. You've completely lost me. And so I came up with different ways to introduce myself based on the audience that I was talking to. So for some people, I say, hi, my name's Drew. I'm a business development consultant and a sales coach. For other people, I say, I'm a pipeline professor. I've got a philosophy background. I got my master's in psychology-based leadership. I've got a little bit of that professorial vibe, especially if you throw a tweed jacket on. So I kind of lean into that a little bit, and so, okay, what does that mean? Pipeline professor, right? I was at a networking event. I was actually at an insurance conference, a really beautiful conference actually put on by Insure Equality. And I started using that line because that room really responded to it. They were like, oh, I get that. Like you help analyze and dissect sales pipelines and help make them more effective. I totally understand it. So that was one. And then one of my favorites is I build and enhance sales engines. And I love that opening because no one knows what a sales engine is because they've never heard that term before because I made it up. I never heard it. So it piques their interest. What does that mean? And it's like, well, if you take a car engine and you actually build it and look at all the different components and how they work together, sales is the exact same way. All of the individual components of the sales engine need to be in harmony, need to be well-oiled, well-prepped, well mechanicked in order for them to really operate well. And, and I was very intentional in saying I both build and enhance. So if you're a new company with a new product, I can build a sales engine from the ground up. If you're an existing company with an existing product and an existing sales team, I can enhance what's already there. So I very clearly tell people what I do while generating some intrigue and getting them to say, tell me more. I want to know more about that. So if I was walking into an office to hand a resume off or a card or a marketing packet, I would want to think, okay, how am I going to introduce myself? What's the one line that I can say that people are going to maybe chuckle a little or like maybe be a little disarmed and be like, I don't know what that means. But the goal is to get them to tell me more and to have a little bit of a dialogue. So again, I don't know enough about Serena's specific experience, but I see George shaking his head. I think this really can relate to any industry and at any time when you're introducing yourself for any service.
Drew, this is such an important skill, and this is hard though too. I want to say that up front. I mean,
it's very hard.
This is not. If you're able to come up with a tagline like that for yourself right now, then I'll hire you. I don't, and so understand that it's not something that necessarily comes easy. I have found that some people's brains just kind of work this way and are really good at doing it. I think it's a kind of innate skill that people have. But it's important what Drew's saying, to be continuing to position yourself this way, to see yourself this way, to be able to talk about yourself in a way that can address the needs that people have. And so, Serena, as you're going into this spot, if you've got a tagline like that, great. If not, one of the things that you want to do is to know that you're already representing yourself, like Drew was saying, and ask questions, be curious, talk to people. If somebody is there that seems like they have a little bit of time, isn't immediately pushing you away, engage with them, ask them questions. If everybody's busy and they're like, you can tell that it's not a great time, you could even say, hey, dropping this off. I'm going to be down the street at this cafe doing some work. Is there a better time I could come back? Or just be like so there to serve them in whatever capacity, but be ready. I think that especially as things have been so online, nor like a kind of typical response that I do when somebody comes in to the office where I'm at, and I haven't seen anybody in a while. My first thing is I'm like scared because like there's a human being, and then I'm like, whoa, there's a human being. And so if I can, I'll start engaging. I just want to talk. So be aware of that. Depending on the kind of environment that you're walking into, they might not be ready for somebody going in, or it's a little awkward or whatever. That might not mean that you need to run. It could mean that you just need to feel it out a little bit. But I think it's such a good question. And I think Drew, I think we're having a lot of fun answering it. But
Yeah.
Serena, if there's more that you want to follow up on that, please do. I'm seeing James here in engaging with what Drew just brought up, and I actually want to open up the floor here. Drew, would you be down to coach some people on just open it up and see about how people would tag themselves?
Sure. Yeah, let's talk about it. I love it. James, and while we're doing that, I just want to highlight Eric's feedback as well. Which to Serena, if you walk in person, do be prepared to be asked to apply online. They may have a very specific application process that needs to be followed. And while they may applaud you coming in and wanting to assert yourself, they may say, hey, we need it done online. And so and that's okay. That's a win. Don't see that as like this was a waste of your time. This like I should have just done that to begin with. No. You've taken a step further than probably anybody else who's applying for this role. And that now that there's somebody in that office who can put a face to the name is absolutely a good thing. And then the only recommendation there is if they do say that, get home and apply that day. And and when you're in the office, grab business cards. Be like, hey, so the person, I was hoping to talk to the hiring manager for this position. They're not available. Oh, no problem. Do they have a card? Do you have a card? Collect data, collect contact information, names, and then you email people. I stopped in, I wanted to say hello and introduce myself. So-and-so asked me to apply online, which I just did. But I also wanted to make sure you got my resume and see if we might be able to have a conversation. Or just wanted to make sure you got my resume and wanted to say hello. Thanks so much. And then you connect with them on LinkedIn. So now they're seeing your name pop up in different places and in different situations. So that's the last bit on that. If you're going into an office, collect as much data about as many people as you can by getting business cards and names. And if there's anybody, I love what James threw in the chat. If he's able to come off mute, or anybody else that wants to dig in.
Let's do it. So get ready to jump in and share. I'm going to address Serena. It looks like you're right back on now. So Drew is sharing about how to introduce yourself. And I was saying that that's a process. And what we're going to do now is play around with this some. It's awesome. You've already applied online. You wanted to go above and beyond. That's great. And oh shoot, there was I think one other thing I was going to say, but let's go ahead and jump over to James and see about this thing of how to introduce yourself. I remember what it was. Serena, the other thing, and everybody listening in, the other thing about what Drew's sharing here of kind of going above and beyond, connecting on LinkedIn, remember that a lot of places might not have a good hiring process. So anytime that you're following up, and you're kind of questioning, oh, am I doing this too soon or that sort of thing? The answer is usually no. The answer is usually you want to put yourself out there, make their job easier. They might not have a great hiring process, they probably don't. And so if you're making yourself visible, you're already showing them that you take initiative. And it's like if I have 10 resumes and somebody's connected with me on LinkedIn, stopped by in person, followed up with an email, I mean, already I'm like, okay, this person gets stuff done. They do what they need to do. So Serena, you're on it. Let us know how it goes. It sounds like you're doing all the good stuff here. So looking forward to hearing how that goes. So James, I would love to hear from you, man. Great having you here.
Thank you. I got to go in like 5 minutes. I'm always trying to be 15 minutes early to my job. So from my experience, I might not be the best, I might not be the worst, but I want to be different. So I want people to get a second look. So if there's 90 something people in a crowd, I want to be that 91st person that's just a little bit different, that catches someone's eye. And the first impression when I walk in, I give someone a resume, whether, it's on LinkedIn or whatever. It's like even if it's outside their culture, it's kind of rude to like jump in and throw a resume. Hey, this is my numbers. This is what I do. They're like, whoa, they see that hustle in you. They're like, wait a minute, that guy is going to do that every day. I want to spend 50 hours a week with this guy. So that's like the impression I try to bring in on that. That's my philosophy. That might be a little brash for a lot of people, but at the end of the day, you got to do what works best for you. I'm in-person business, so the Zoom world is a little weird for me. So I literally, if I'm in the car business, I literally walk in and say, hey, here's my numbers. This is what I do. Want to hire me or not? We'll talk.
Cool. James, what do you think of saying I'm an automotive account manager? And Drew, what do you think of that?
Well, no one wants to talk to a car salesman. But when you put manager in there, it's just a play on words. I'm not a manager, but it gets the customer to bring down a little bit. Okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. He's going to get me through the process a little faster. So it brings down the swords a little bit. And in my business, you have to do that. So.
Yeah, I mean, what I like about that is it takes the language we're used to using, talking about guys that sell cars, and formalizing it a little bit, and giving a little bit more, just taking the stigma away from what they may associate with a car salesman and replacing it with the stigma they might have with an account manager.
Yeah.
And I think what other ways that you could keep playing with it, using like being a consultant, and the fact that you do a consultative service where you get to know people and then make recommendations based on who they are and what their needs are. I think could be another cool way to play with it. And you're in a cool space where there are people walking into your showroom regularly. You can try different things. You can do what marketers call A/B testing, where you're just trying different language, see what resonates with people, see what doesn't. Marjorie recommended expertise in the automotive industry. Leveling up with words like expert is really good too. But I really see you, James, in that consultative space, and showing people that this is not, you're not matching them with a product. You're finding a solution to their needs. Well, how does that resonate with you?
Exactly. Everybody wants a shiny Porsche, but realistically, you might not be able to afford that. Let's put you in something you can afford, and whatever. Maybe next year.
Yeah. Or you might need something a little bigger for the family. You might need something with better gas mileage because of how much you can afford monthly, whatever it might be. Like there's all sorts of things that go into that. I feel like George, I feel like you're itching to step in.
I totally. Well, I like car consultant, but I'm thinking about like me and my wife, and we have a car, and we're looking at what would it be like if we had another one, because she's an artist and has to do shows. And so there is this whole thing of like what to think through, that honestly, there's just a lot of details that just having somebody listen and make some suggestions. I mean, that's an honestly helpful thing. And then there's also the side of it, because there's different kinds of cars coming out. It's like I so want an electric one, but at the same time, it's like, well, there's no way that there's going to be an electric car that's going to have the kind of size, but I don't know that. I'm just making all this stuff up. So I think, I think especially perhaps in a city where there's so many things to think about in owning a car, the size, how do you park it, what's the, I think there's a lot of information that could be really helpful for people. So that was what I was thinking.
Yeah. In that way, it's almost like an automotive detective, like the Sherlock Holmes of Toyota. People walk in, and based on how tightly tied their tie is, you can tell what type of vehicle they're looking for, and that sort of thing. But the key to this idea of a bumper sticker is giving yourself as many opportunities to try it out. And you might be in a space like James where you're meeting new people all the time at your job, and you can try it out a lot. Or if you're starting a new company and you're building a lead list and you're getting to know people and you're getting into your desired industry, networking events, you got to show up, and you got to give yourself a chance to test this organic branding and this way that you're representing yourself, to see how people react to it, to see how it feels coming out of your mouth, to tweak it and tailor it. And so that's one of my best practices, both the very early days of starting my business and as I start coming up on my last quarter of my first year, which is insane to think about, that in November, I'll be 3 months away from my 1-year anniversary as an entrepreneur, is that I take every opportunity to have a conversation, whether it's a formal networking conversation, whether it's sitting next to somebody at the airplane, in line with somebody at the grocery store. And it doesn't always go professional, in the sense that I don't always use my bumper sticker, but I just talk to people. And this, it's not easy, and it takes time. And I am much more on the introverted side than the extroverted side. I've had to work really hard on developing those skills. But it all starts with kind of coming up with a way that you want to introduce yourself, and then getting out there and testing it. And with the in-person networking events coming back, I have one to actually, I think tomorrow tomorrow the concerts. I have one next Thursday that I'm not excited to go to. I don't want to show up at a networking event at 6 o'clock after a long day and drive 30 minutes into the loop and find parking and go to everything in my body is saying bail on this. And if you're anything like me, anytime you get invited to a networking event, you're probably feeling the exact same way. And that's where having allies that can support you and hold you accountable. So one of the biggest things that I did when I started my career transition was I went out and found 2 people in my network who were also transitioning in different ways, but also doing, figuring out what they wanted to be when they grow up, that kind of conversation. And twice a week for 30 minutes, we support each other. And we come into that room, and we meet on Zoom for 30 minutes twice a week, and we hold each other accountable for the things that we want to get done. And it's everything from, hey, I need to have 5 networking conversations this week. I've got 3 scheduled. I need 2 more. It's just vocalizing these things. Or hey, I really need to get my accounting and my finance late. I haven't balanced my books in 2 months. And guilty, I didn't balance my books for 3 months in the middle of this year. I was scared of it. I didn't want to look at the numbers. Turns out I was making more money than I thought I was. So it was actually better than what I was expecting, but it was terrifying. But it was that group that gave me the accountability to do that. I would literally, the power of vocalizing to somebody, hey, George, by the end of today, I want to have my accounts, my books balanced, and I want to schedule 2 networking conversations for the rest of this week. And then at the end of the day, one of my friends would text me hey, Drew, did you get it done? No. Well, don't get up until you finish it. Sometimes a little hard love is absolutely what I need. So it's finding allies in different ways, in different spaces. So that accountability group was massive, and still is. We still meet twice a week and continue to support each other. Finding other people in your community and being open to talking about the process. A big thing that I've gone through is I historically think that I need to show up perfect. That if I'm not totally buttoned up, absolutely scripted, and showing up like I'm $1,000,000 every single time, then I shouldn't show up at all. And one thing I've learned as I'm building this company is that I am not going to be perfect most of the time, but I still need to go out there and serve. I need to offer my services. I need to sell my services. I need to invoice for those services so I can support myself and my family. Life is not going to wait for me to be perfect. I've got to be more comfortable showing up a little less perfect. And that was my own journey, and it still very much is. But becoming a small business owner, becoming an entrepreneur has given me a playground to play with this stuff every single day. And that's what's super cool about it. It's super hard, but super, super cool. So yeah, I don't know. I'm going to catch up. I don't know if there's any other questions in the chat here.
I think we're wrapping up on the questions here. Although I think I'll do a quick room reset, Drew. But I so appreciate what you're sharing. I mean, about the hard skills of starting your own business and the soft skills of starting your own business. And, some of what you're just touching on around that making mistakes piece. I mean, that's terrifying. It's like your business. And if you're going to do everything right immediately, well, that's never going to happen. And that you're pointing out that, your service that you provide, that there's value and benefit beyond the perfection. Of course, depending on what you're doing, there's areas of expertise in being, having things perfect that are going to make a difference. I'm thinking of Lucky Gorman on this call with us right now, and there's certain things in his business that absolutely have to be perfect. But there's a lot of things that you're going to make mistakes on, and that doesn't have to hold you back as you're developing your business. So I'm as somebody who is developing my business, that's incredibly important for me to hear, Drew. So I mean, yesterday I was all freaked out over like a mistake that when I woke up this morning, I was like, okay, dude, it's just not that big of a deal. Like, it's gonna work itself out. You're ahead of the game. It's all right. But the cortisol rushing through my body for an hour yesterday was a real thing. So
Yeah.
I appreciate hearing.
Well, all the networking advice, Drew, that you gave is what I've learned the hard way. The one tip that I would add is when you're seeing people in person, ask them questions, a question or two, and respond to them. That way you remain indelible in their memory.
That's great, Lucky. I mean, it's God, how often have I asked somebody their name and I don't listen to the answer, right? And then I get to the end of the conversation, it's like, shit, what was their name again? And you're taking that to the next level, like asking intentional questions and intentionally acknowledging their response. And having, and what that causes is people feel seen, they feel supported, they feel cared for, and they feel like they matter. And so much of what I've found entrepreneurship to be is finding ways that I can support people in my community. And whether that's exactly what I thought I'd be doing on a daily basis, every day is different. It's there's a lot of humility and humbleness that comes to it. But there's also this immense amount of flexibility. Once you have an LLC and you've got accounting structures, suddenly it's like, well, what else can I be doing? How else can my business grow? You want to be focused, and James put it in the chat a while back. Niche down, right? You want to have a specific community that you're serving in a specific way, so people know how to refer you. And you may have a couple to start, but there is value to niching down. But there's also value as an entrepreneur to trying different things and seeing where you might be able to find additional revenue and opportunities to express yourself. And being comfortable trying something, not knowing exactly what the ROI or the return on investment is going to be. but be willing to try it and say, I'm going to test this out for a couple hours. I'm going to go down this rabbit hole, see if this is something I want to do, or I'm going to put 2 hours a week into something. That was something I did early on. One of the things that I think helped me figure out who my ICP was, again, that ideal client profile, I had a say yes to everything attitude for a few months, where anytime somebody asked me if I could do something, unless I had an absolute direct conflict, I said yes, at least in part. Maybe I can't do everything they're asking, but I'll do part of it. And I worked with a couple of other small business owners, and I wasn't getting paid, but I was understanding how I am able to serve as an independent consultant in their business in a very small capacity, which gave me the ability to talk about that and market myself, which was invaluable in generating paying clients. So, I'm not saying go work for free for a few years, but if you have if there's somebody in your network that's looking to get something off the ground or needs a little help with something, sometimes I found by doing a few gratis and pro bono type things, I was better able to understand who I was as a business owner, and then could present myself that way in the community. And so that was incredibly valuable. And there was one other part of that, but I'm kind of Marjorie threw it in, volunteering for committees. Hey, at one point, every single morning I was waking up and I was applying for focus groups to go and show up at a focus group and get paid $200 to answer questions. Did I think that's what I was going to be doing as an entrepreneur? No way. But I found an avenue to get a little bit of money. It was, I basically spent 30 minutes a day, and I was able to get a little bit of cash early on, and it was super helpful. Some people, you might be like driving Uber, or if you have a background in bartending or serving and you pick up a couple shifts here and there. There's something about that as well, that a little bit of foundational income can provide the psychological stability to take a chance in other areas of the business. And one I think insider tip, real kind of pro tip that I've learned that I think is kept too much of as like a best secret, is the world of subcontracting. Whatever you do as a small business owner, there are other companies that have been doing it a lot longer than you, but need people to actually fulfill the service. So as a sales coach and a fractional sales leader, my goal is to hire clients directly. George needs a sales coach. George hires me directly. Well, there's another sales consulting firm that has larger clients that they've been prospecting and selling to, and they've sold them this agreement, but they might not have someone on their staff who can actually fulfill the needs of the fractional leadership service that they sold. So that company, I have a relationship with them. They come to me and they're like, "Hey, Drew, we've got a new client. We're going to split, you get 50, we're going to split the revenue 50-50, and you're going to get to do what you love doing and not have to do the prospecting. And it's going to be a mutually beneficial relationship." Huge eye opener for me. And there's a lot of people that I have looked up to as successful entrepreneurs who I only recently found out started out doing subcontracting work for other companies. They're still able to do it under their LLC and their company, and and operate as a solo person, but they have these agreements with the larger companies to help give them experience, build up their resume, build up their case studies, build up their referrals. And once I found that, I was like, man, if that person is doing it, we should all be doing it. And so looking into the world of subcontracting can be a massive game changer when it comes to getting a business off the ground.
Great. I'm so glad you brought that part in. I'm as I am learning from you, Drew, I'm just getting a kind of vision landscape of what I might be doing in 2024. And so I really appreciate that part of it. And so by having your own business, your own LLC, then I'll talk about myself. So Drew, you're gonna coach me some here. So when I have my own LLC, then it's easy for me to submit a contract or whatever to a coaching organization. And they can say, okay, well, we'll hire you on for 3 months to fulfill this thing. And then it's like I can have kind of revenue piece, and then I can also have my individual clients that are just kind of ongoing. And then I can also let's say I create some kind of a product, like an online course, and then I can have that revenue stream as well, and that can all come in through my personal business. Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So I have I have two categories on my balance sheet. I have individual invoices that where I am working directly with my client. And then I also have my subcontracting invoices. And that's where I'm billing my partner so it gets more complicated with the chain of being paid. But it's you keep it organized. It's not too bad. That's good. Higher tier gaps, right? If money's a gap, invest in an accountant. There's a lot of fractional accountants out there who can help you out. I'm actually interviewing one next week to talk about taxes for next year and all that kind of stuff. But yes, once you have a business entity and you can take in money, you can bill, you can collect all for different services within that business. Now, in certain industries, there's certain licenses and certifications you have to deliver certain products in certain states, right? Like you need to be aware of some of that legality. But in our world of consulting, it's fairly open. It's fairly fair game. And the one thing you want to keep an eye on, and if you're looking at some of these subcontracting agreements, is talking about the cadence for being paid. I'm used to it from the insurance industry of being paid a few months after I actually sell a deal because of how long that takes. But if you're new to it, you may sign a contract where you're delivering a service in September and you don't get paid until November 1st on it. And that's just normal. And so understanding the how long it takes you to get paid on things and being able to budget for that and don't be surprised by it is another factor. And sometimes that can, as you continue to grow, you've got bargaining power. You can say like, hey, I used to get paid 6 months after the contract, or 6 weeks after, I would love to keep working with you guys, but I need to get paid within 2 weeks. Like I need you to figure out how to finance that and make it happen. So you start to develop ways that you can negotiate and things too.
Oh, beautiful. Okay. Well, we're coming up on the end of our time. My goodness, this flew by. Drew, thank you so much for sharing your journey, your story, and your knowledge of starting your own business and what that can look like in today's world. Very helpful to me and helpful to our listeners. So really appreciate you. And I want to make sure that let's go ahead and throw your website in here for people to check out. And I know before we were live, Drew and I were talking some, and Drew's got some exciting things coming out. So keep an eye open. I'll be sharing some of the things that he's working on as we approach the new year. So excited to share that information with you. I got to take a sneak peek at some of it, and it was great. I was like, yeah, this is something that I would want in my back pocket. So we'll keep you updated with that. And Drew, again, thank you so much for joining in. And as we're wrapping up, Marjorie, thank you. Thank you for joining in and checking this out today and sharing some of what you've got going on. Lucky, good having you here as well. And earlier, James and Eric, thank you all. Really appreciate it. This is Career Lab Wednesday, here every Wednesday, noon to 1 p.m. Central. My job is to support you in your career. Any career-related questions are fine. Bring them in. No question too small, no question too big. And I look forward to continuing to support you. And Drew, we'll have to have you back on maybe in another month or so, and we can share some more about what you've got going on.
Sounds great. I love it. Thanks, George. It's great to be here. And I threw my LinkedIn in the chat as well. If we're not already connected, would love to be connected with y'all. So.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you.
Soon.
All right. Take care. Oh, Siddiqui, good to hear from you. Take care, man. All right. Goodbye, everybody.